The valet took my beat-up Civic like it was a biohazard, his nose practically twitching. I didn't care. My hands were full, one clutching the strap of my thrifted floral dress, the other balancing a white plastic box. Inside, a $14.99 grocery store cake bought on a frantic break between a morning catering gig and an afternoon event setup. It was a last-minute thought, a don't-show-up empty-handed gesture for a family I barely knew anymore. This was Elena Mason's bridal shower, held at her fiancé's family estate. Estate felt like an understatement. It was a sprawling, gated fortress of manicured lawns and fountains, the kind of place where even the air smelled expensive. I'm Vanessa Burke. I'm 27, and I work as a junior event coordinator, sometimes picking up freelance catering gigs to make ends meet. It's how I know places like this, and it's how I know the Masons. I walked past a champagne tower that probably cost more than my rent, past tables laden with Gucci and Cartier boxes, past women who looked like they'd been sculpted from Botox and designer fabric. I felt like an alien, or maybe a prop from a different movie. My dress, a surprisingly good find from a vintage shop, felt suddenly flimsy. Then I saw her, Elena, my cousin, 29 years old, radiant in a silk jumpsuit, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed. She was the golden child, the one who effortlessly glided through life, never knowing what it was like to count pennies or work 2 jobs. We hadn't been close since we were kids, not really. Not since my dad, her uncle, left my mom for a wealthier woman, who just so happened to be connected to the Masons, his cousin's in-laws. It was a messy, ugly split that effectively severed my branch of the family from theirs, leaving us on the outside looking in. They'd always made it clear I wasn't one of them. Elena's eyes, the same shade of blue as mine, swept over me. They lingered on my dress for a beat too long, then dropped to the plastic cake box in my hands. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows did a tiny, almost imperceptible lift. A slow, saccharine smile spread across her face. "Vanessa," she purred, her voice dripping with an artificial sweetness that made my teeth ache. "You made it." "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my own voice even. "Wouldn't miss it." I held out the cake. "For you." She took it, her manicured fingers barely touching the plastic. Her gaze flickered to Natasha Wong, her maid of honor, who was standing beside her, phone in hand. Natasha, 28, a social media influencer with a permanent pout, barely stifled a giggle. It wasn't a quiet giggle. It was the kind that blooms like a disease infecting everyone around her. A few other cousins' faces I vaguely remembered from long ago holiday gatherings joined in, their laughter tinkling like broken glass. "Oh, Vanessa," Natasha said, her voice loud enough for a few nearby guests to turn their heads. "How thoughtful." She raised her phone, not even trying to be subtle. The flash went off. I felt my cheeks flush, but I held her gaze. Let them laugh. I'd seen worse. I'd cleaned up worse. A moment later, a notification sound pinged from Natasha's phone, followed by more suppressed giggles. I knew what it was before I even saw it. My phone, still in my purse, vibrated. I pulled it out, pretending to check a message, and navigated to Instagram. Sure enough, there it was. Natasha's latest story. A close-up of my sad little cake, still in its plastic box, sitting on a pristine white linen tablecloth next to a sparkling diamond gift. The caption read, "Welcome to Tiffany's." Oh, wait. My stomach tightened. I watched the view count climb, 100, 200, 500. The laughter around me seemed to grow louder, more confident, like a chorus of hyenas. They wanted me to feel small, and for a second I did. But then something else started to simmer, something hot and familiar. this wasn't just about a cake. This was about everything. They seated me at the far corner of the main table, practically next to the waitstaff service entrance. It was a subtle but effective move, out of sight, out of mind. I picked at a canapé, watching the room through narrowed eyes. Elena was at the head, surrounded by her bridesmaids, including Natasha, who was still glued to her phone, occasionally flashing a triumphant smile. Her new story, the one mocking my cake, was probably racking up thousands of views by now. It wasn't new, this feeling of being an outsider. My whole life it had been like this. Every family gathering, every holiday dinner I was dragged to by my mom before she finally gave up. I was always the one in the slightly too small dress, the one whose parents didn't have a summer house in the Hamptons. Prudence Mason, Elena's mother, my aunt by marriage, had always been the ringleader of the exclusion. Prudence, 55, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair and a permanent expression of polite disdain, had mastered the art of making you feel like dirt without saying a single overtly rude word. She just had to look at you. Or, like the time I was 10, make a comment about my shoes not being quite right for a garden party. My mom, bless her heart, had just squeezed my hand and smiled tightly. We left shortly after. I remembered a Christmas when I was maybe 8. Elena, then 10, had gotten a pony. I got a board game. Not that I expected a pony, but the sheer gulf between our lives was always on display. My dad, Roland Mason's 57 brother, had left us when I was young, and while he eventually got a job through Uncle Roland, it was always clear we were the other family, the one they tolerated but never truly accepted. A familiar face approached my corner, a small, tentative smile on her lips. Hope Ramirez, 26, a childhood friend. We used to play together when our mothers, both working class, would briefly cross paths at community events. Hope was always sweet, a little shy, and now she looked uncomfortable, caught between worlds. She was one of Elena's bridesmaids, probably because their families had known each other for ages, even if their social circles had diverged. "Hey, Vanessa," Hope whispered, sliding into the empty chair beside me. "It's good to see you." "You too, Hope," I said genuinely. Her presence was a small comfort in this gilded cage. She glanced around, her eyes darting nervously. "Look, I just wanted to say about the cake. Don't let it get to you. Natasha's just like that." "I know," I said, a dry smile playing on my lips. "It's fine." Hope leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There's something else, though. Elena's been stressed. She told us, the bridesmaids, that she expects everyone to cover their contribution later. Apparently nothing's been paid in full for the catering. She thought the gifts would be enough to cover it, or something, like she expected everyone to lavish her with more than just presents, and now she's short." My eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? For her own bridal shower?" Hope nodded, wringing her hands. "Yeah, she said she assumed the generosity of her guest list would take care of it. But it's a full-service catering and the bill is probably massive. She's trying to figure out how to tell everyone without looking bad." Just then, a discreet conversation drifted over from the service entrance. The maitre d', a man in a crisp black suit, was speaking softly but urgently into a phone. "I understand, sir, but we need a card on file. The event is underway and we still don't have a secured payment method." He paused, listening. "No, we cannot continue without one. We will have to pause service if this isn't resolved." He hung up, looking visibly frustrated. He then turned to a server, his voice low but firm. "No card on file. Keep an eye on the host. We need to address this before the main course." My mind, trained from years of working these exact kinds of events, immediately started connecting the dots. No card on file. Guests to cover their contribution. Elena's assumption of generosity. It all clicked into place. Elena had walked into this event expecting someone else to foot the bill, probably her fiancé Davis Kent's 33 family, or maybe even her own parents, Prudence and Roland, but it hadn't happened. And now the catering company was on the verge of pulling the plug. Just as the realization solidified, Elena's voice, amplified by the microphone, cut through the room. I just want to thank everyone for coming today. It means so much to have all my favorite people here celebrating with me. She began listing names, thanking specific friends, her bridesmaids, her mother Prudence and her uncle Roland. She even thanked Davis's parents. She thanked everyone except me. It was the final tiny prick, the one that pushed me over the edge. I felt a cold, clear resolve settle over me. This wasn't just about a cake anymore. This was about years of being invisible, of being less than. I pulled out my phone, a smirk slowly spreading across my face. I opened my contacts and found the number for Marcus, the head chef at Gourmet Galore, the catering company I knew was handling this event. I'd worked with him plenty of times. He owed me a favor or two. I typed out a quick text. Hey Marcus, it's Vanessa Burke. Quick question about the Mason bridal shower today. Is the account still unsettled? I hit send. The game was on. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Marcus. Yeah, V. Total nightmare. Client's been dodging calls all morning. We're about to pull the plug if they don't get a card on file in the next 15. Why? I typed back, a slow smile spreading across my face. Don't pull the plug. I'll cover it. Just for the tab. And I need a favor. Discreetly leave a note with your maitre d'. Tell him Vanessa Burke is assuming coverage. And I want a private receipt, gold-framed, delivered to Elena at dessert. Make it a show. Marcus's reply was a single word. Done. You're a legend. My heart hammered a little. What was this going to cost me? I had savings, sure, but they were for a down payment on a small apartment, not for a luxury bridal shower for my estranged cousin. Would it backfire? Would Elena just laugh it off, or worse, get her parents to pay me back and make me look like a fool? But then I thought about all the years, all the times I'd been made to feel less than. The not quite right shoes, the hushed whispers about my mom working 2 jobs, the way Prudence Mason, Elena's mother, always looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her designer shoe. I remembered a specific incident, clearer than anything. I was maybe 12, and my mom, bless her stubborn heart, had actually managed to get us invited to a Mason family picnic. It was at their country club, sprawling green lawns, white linen tablecloths, waiters in crisp uniforms. I was trying to play croquet with Elena and Tobias, her older brother, who was then 15. He was always quiet, even then. Elena, 17, was already a mini Prudence, bossing everyone around. I remember Prudence walking over, her voice like ice. Vanessa, darling, are you sure you should be playing with that mallet? It's rather expensive, and your attire isn't quite suited for the grass. My mom, who had been chatting with Uncle Roland, Prudence's husband, saw the look on my face. She walked over, her own face tight. Prudence, we're leaving. She grabbed my hand, her grip firm, and pulled me away, past the laughing faces of the other Mason cousins, past Elena's smug smile. I could hear Prudence's voice. Well, honestly, some people just don't understand decorum. We drove home in silence, my mom's knuckles white on the steering wheel. That memory fueled me now. I'd spent years in catering working these exact kinds of events. I'd mopped champagne vomit off marble floors after drunken guests stumbled out of galas. I'd served endless trays of tiny, expensive appetizers to women who wouldn't meet my eye, who treated me like an extension of the silverware. I knew the meticulous planning, the hidden costs, the sheer labor that went into making these lavish parties seem effortless. I knew the maitre d' was probably sweating bullets right now, trying to keep the facade up while the client was ghosting them. And I knew what a bill like this would look like. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. This wasn't just a party, it was a full-blown production. I watched the maitre d' now, a subtle nod passing between him and one of the servers. He'd gotten my message. The service continued seamlessly. The tension in the room, which only I seemed to have noticed, began to dissipate. Guests continued to mingle, oblivious, sipping their champagne, admiring the diamond gifts, and snapping photos of the opulent setting. Hope, still beside me, leaned over. "What was that about?" "Just a little business," I said, a cryptic smile on my face. "Don't worry about it." She looked at me, confused, but didn't press. The main courses arrived. Seared scallops, tiny roasted potatoes, asparagus spears arranged like works of art. More champagne flowed. The laughter grew louder, the conversations more animated. Elena was holding court, basking in the glow of her impending nuptials. Davis Kent, her fiancé, a Wall Street type, 33, sat beside her, looking pleased but somewhat detached, as if he was just along for the ride. He seemed genuinely unaware of the financial drama unfolding behind the scenes. My uncle, Roland Mason, 57, Prudence's husband, caught my eye from across the table. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, a flicker of something like guilt in his eyes. He was the one who got my father that job after the divorce, a quiet acknowledgement of the family split, even if he never truly intervened. Tobias Mason, Elena's older brother, 30, sat next to his father, silent as ever, observing the scene with a detached, almost bored expression. He'd always been the quiet one, the observer. Dessert carts were being wheeled in, champagne, waffles, gold-dusted strawberries, miniature creme brulee. The air filled with the sweet scent of sugar and anticipation. This was it. The curtain was about to rise. The room buzzed with the clinking of forks against china and the murmur of satisfied guests. Dessert was in full swing. Elena was laughing, her head thrown back, a picture of bridal bliss. Davis, her fiancé, was still smiling, perhaps a little too widely. Prudence Mason, Elena's mother, surveyed the scene with a look of smug satisfaction. My Uncle Roland and Tobias, Elena's brother, were still quiet, observing. Then a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The maitre d', the same one I'd seen on the phone earlier, entered the room, flanked by two servers. They weren't carrying dessert. Instead, they moved with a deliberate, almost ceremonial pace, each holding a silver tray. On one tray, under a gleaming cloche dome, was nothing, just the dome. On the other, a single gold-framed object. Intrigued whispers rippled through the room. Heads turned. Elena paused mid-laugh, her eyes narrowing slightly as the maitre d' approached her table. The servers placed the empty cloche dome in front of her, then the tray with the gold frame. The maitre d', his face impassive, addressed Elena directly, his voice clear and resonant, carrying easily through the suddenly quiet room. "Ms. Mason, on behalf of Gourmet Galore, thank you for celebrating with us today. We hope you and your guests enjoyed the service." He paused, then picked up the gold frame. "And here is the final statement for today's services, as requested." He presented the gold frame to Elena. Her smile faltered. Her eyes, wide and confused, dropped to the frame. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly. The room was utterly silent now, every eye fixed on her. Even Natasha, her phone forgotten, was staring. Elena's eyes scanned the document. Her face, which moments before had been radiant, drained of all color. It went from pale to ashen, then to a sickly green. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her grip on the frame loosened, and it clattered onto the table, the glass reflecting the horrified expression on her face. The maitre d' continued, his voice unwavering, as if reading from a script. The total for today's services is $7,426.20, gratuity not included. With appreciation to Vanessa Burke for covering the account. A collective gasp filled the room. It was loud, almost physical. A few people choked on their champagne. Elena's eyes, wide and horrified, darted to me. Her champagne flute, still in her hand, slipped from her grasp and shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. I met her gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. I slowly, deliberately raised my own glass of sparkling cider. I was still on the clock, technically, and didn't want to mix alcohol with my current state of focused vindication. I added a 25% tip, I announced, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the stunned silence, for hospitality and shame. The words hung in the air, more gasps. Some people looked between me and Elena, then back at the maitre d', their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Prudence Mason's face was a mask of furious disbelief, her eyes darting from the bill to me, then to her son Tobias, who, for the first time all day, looked genuinely interested, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touching his lips. Roland Mason, my uncle, just looked down at his plate, shaking his head slowly. Davis Kent, Elena's fiancé, looked utterly bewildered, his eyes wide as saucers. Elena, her face a contorted mask of humiliation and rage, pushed back from the table so violently her chair scraped loudly across the floor. She scrambled to her feet, knocking over a water glass, and stumbled away from the table, her silk jumpsuit a blur as she stormed out of the room, leaving a trail of shattered glass and stunned silence in her wake. The maitre d' gave me a discreet, almost imperceptible nod of thanks before he and his servers quietly exited the room. The silence didn't last. Whispers began to stir, growing louder beyond Elena's immediate humiliation. People were talking, not just about the bill, but about me, about the grocery store cake, about the Tiffany's caption, and now about the $7,126.20 bill and the 25% tip. I took a slow sip of my cider, the sweet liquid tasting like victory. The show was just beginning. The room was a cacophony of hushed conversations and stunned expressions after Elena stormed out. No one was laughing now. No one was looking at my thrifted dress or my $14.99 cake. They were looking at me and then at their phones. I saw Natasha Wong, Elena's maid of honor, her face pale, frantically tapping on her screen. Too late, honey. The internet is forever. I stayed for another 10 minutes, just long enough to make my point, then quietly slipped out. The valet surprisingly didn't look at my Civic with disdain this time. He just looked at me, a flicker of something like respect in his eyes. Later that evening, my phone started blowing up, not with hate messages, surprisingly. At first, it was a trickle. A few of Elena's socialite friends, the ones who had giggled at Natasha's post, were sliding into my DMs. OMG, Vanessa, I am so sorry. I had no idea. Elena is just a lot. That was epic. Honestly, she deserved it. Can't believe she tried to stick us with the bill. The apologies were private, of course, probably sent from behind locked doors, far from Prudence Mason's watchful eye. Then Hope Ramirez texted me. Vanessa, the video. It's everywhere. Natasha deleted her story, but it's too late. Someone else filmed it. My heart gave a little jump. I opened Instagram again, and there it was. Not Natasha's mocking photo, but a full-blown video. Someone, probably one of the cater servers, had filmed the entire reveal. The maitre d' presenting the bill, Elena's face draining, the shattered flute, my calm declaration about the tip. Someone had even set it to dramatic music. It was already viral, racking up hundreds of thousands of views. The comments were a mix of outrage and pure, unadulterated glee. Bridal shower, gate, cake gate, pay, your bills, Elena. Just as I was scrolling through the comments, my phone rang. It was Prudence Mason, Elena's mother. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Vanessa. Her voice was tight, strained, devoid of its usual frosty composure. What in God's name was that? A bill, Aunt Prudence, I said, my voice calm, almost bored. Someone had to pay it. You humiliated her, she practically shrieked. You humiliated us. This is all over the internet. What possessed you to do something so attention-seeking? Attention-seeking, I scoffed. Aunt Prudence, for years I've been invisible to you, or worse, a punchline. Remember my shoes at the picnic? Remember how you always made it clear I wasn't one of them? Remember how my dad's family, which your family, treated my mom and me after he left? I've been trying to be invisible for years. This was just me finally showing up. This has nothing to do with that, she snapped. This is about a party, a gift. You brought a cheap cake and then you tried to make a spectacle. The cheap cake was a gift, yes, I countered. A last-minute one, because I was busy working 2 jobs, something you wouldn't understand. And the spectacle, that was Elena's choice, trying to sift the caterers and expecting her guests to bail her out. I just facilitated the payment. And for the record, I was told she expected guests to cover their contribution, so I contributed. Quite generously, I might add. There was a beat of silence on the line. You think this is over? She finally hissed. This will have consequences, Vanessa, serious consequences. I'm sure it will, I said and hung up. I didn't expect it to be over. This was just the beginning. The video was spreading like wildfire. My phone pinged again, an email from a media outlet. Dear Ms. Burke, we are writing to you in reference to a viral video circulating online depicting an incident at a recent bridal shower. We would be very interested in hearing your side of the story. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. My heart hammered again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something like opportunity. The media requests kept pouring in, local news, online tabloids, even a few national morning shows. I ignored most of them, unsure how much more I wanted to expose myself or my family to public scrutiny. I wasn't looking for fame, just justice. Then a few days later, my phone rang again. This time it was Uncle Roland. His voice was tired, resigned. Vanessa, it's Roland. Prudence and I, we need you to stay quiet. Please don't talk to the press. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Because it's embarrassing for Elena? Or because it's exposing how you all operate? It's more complicated than that, he sighed. Davis, Elena's fiancé, he's furious. He apparently had no idea Elena planned to pass the cost to guests. He thought his family was handling it or that Elena had secured the account herself. He's saying he didn't sign up for this kind of deception. Good for him, I muttered. No, Vanessa, it's not good, Roland continued. His family, the Kents, they were sponsoring a significant portion of the wedding. a very significant portion, and they just pulled their sponsorship completely. The wedding is in jeopardy. My jaw dropped. That was a bigger fallout than I'd anticipated. A wedding sponsor pulling out? That was serious money. Elena is spiraling, he added, his voice laced with a genuine concern that surprised me. She's locked herself in her room. She's blaming everyone, especially you. I didn't feel bad. Not really. I was dealing with my own kind of spiral. The online world was a wild place. On one hand, I was being hailed as an underdog icon by service workers, by anyone who'd ever felt overlooked or undervalued. Comments like, "This is for every time they look down on us," and "Queen of the working class" flooded my DMs. It was oddly validating. On the other hand, there were the inevitable trolls, calling me a gold digger, jealous, classless. I tried to ignore them, but some of it stung. Hope called me later that day, her voice hushed. "Vanessa, I just left Elena's. It's bad. She's a wreck. Prudence is furious, but she's also trying to manage Elena. And Davis, he's gone." He packed a bag and left. "Wow," I said, genuinely surprised by the speed of the unraveling. She was saying she always resented you," Hope confided, her voice barely a whisper. "She said your dad, her uncle, leaving your mom and building a new family without them, without the Masons, felt like an abandonment. She saw it as him choosing to be lesser than the Masons, and that somehow reflected on her. She always felt like she had to be perfect, the golden child to make up for it. And you, just being you, reminded her of what she saw as her family's flaw." My stomach twisted. That was a new angle. I'd always thought it was about class, about me not being rich enough. But abandonment? A family flaw? It was a twisted logic, but it explained some of Elena's deep-seated bitterness beneath the shine. It didn't excuse her behavior, not by a long shot, but it added a layer I hadn't considered. "She's always been so obsessed with appearances," Hope continued, "and you just shattered hers." "Sometimes the truth shatters things," I said, my voice quiet. Later that evening, an email landed in my inbox. It wasn't from a media outlet. It was from a venture capitalist firm. "Dear Ms. Burke, we have been following the recent viral story involving you and your family. Your ingenuity and strategic thinking in a high-pressure situation have not gone unnoticed. We believe you possess a unique understanding of the event industry, particularly the intersection of service, client relations, and financial transparency. We are offering a business grant for event startups, and we would be very interested in discussing the possibility of you launching your own event coordination and catering service. Please contact us to schedule a meeting." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. A business grant? From someone who saw the viral clip and saw not a scandal, but an opportunity? This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about building something real. Weeks turned into a month. The initial media frenzy around the bridal shower died down, replaced by other viral moments, but the ripples of that day continued to spread through the Mason family. Elena's wedding was postponed indefinitely. Davis Kent, true to his word, had walked away. I heard through Hope that he told Elena he didn't sign up for a relationship built on deception and elitism, especially not one that involved trying to pass off a 5-figure bill to guests. He was apparently a Wall Street guy, but he had a line, and Elena had crossed it. He'd moved out of their shared apartment and was reportedly back in New York. Elena was still holed up, a ghost of her former glamorous self. Prudence Mason, Elena's mother, had tried to do damage control, but the viral video was too pervasive. The Mason name, usually synonymous with old money and impeccable taste, was now linked to a scandal of cheapness and public humiliation. I heard they'd even had to cancel their annual charity gala because of negative press. Meanwhile, my life was unexpectedly taking off. I'd taken the meeting with the venture capitalist firm. It turned out the CEO, a formidable woman named Ms. Albright, had started her own business after facing similar classism in her early career. She saw my actions not as revenge, but as a bold, strategic move. She believed in my vision for an event service that prioritized transparency and genuine hospitality, something she felt was sorely lacking in the high-end market. The business grant was real. I attended a much quieter function a few weeks later, a charity fundraiser for single mothers, hosted by a friend of mine from college. It was held in a community hall, not a gated estate, and the food was potluck, not catered. But the atmosphere was warm, genuine. My friend, who knew about the viral video, formally thanked me for showing up for what's right. It was a small moment, but it felt more validating than any apology from Elena's circle. Hope Ramirez was there too, a quiet but steadfast presence. She'd been a lifeline through the chaos, sharing updates on Elena's meltdown and offering unwavering support. She was genuinely happy for me when I told her about the grant. "So what are you going to call it?" she asked, stirring her tea. I smiled. "Karmic tables. It's for events where everyone knows what they're getting and everyone is treated with respect. No hidden fees, no snobbery, just good food and good company." Hope's eyes lit up. "I love it. You know, I've been thinking, I'm tired of working for people like Elena. I've got some experience with social media and I'm pretty organized. Could I help you launch Karmic Tables? Like be your first employee?" I grinned. "Hope, I was hoping you'd ask." "You're hired." The Mason family might never reconcile with me. The chasm between us was too wide, too deep. But many truths had now surfaced. Elena's deep-seated insecurities, Prudence's controlling nature, Davis's surprising integrity. My own worth, too, had been revealed, not by their standards, but by my own. The revenge had landed, sweet and satisfying, and so had the karma. For them, a public fall from grace. For me, a chance to build something new, something real. My phone buzzed. A new friend request from Tobias Mason, Elena's older brother, the silent observer. I accepted it. Almost immediately, another message popped up, a link, and a short note. "You might find this interesting, publishing under a pen name." The link led to an online expose. The title read, "The Gilded Cage, Unmasking the Hypocrisy of High Society." It was a meticulously researched piece detailing various scandals, financial improprieties, and social machinations within the city's elite, including some very thinly veiled references to the Mason family. Tobias, it seemed, had finally found his voice. It's been a few months since the bridal shower. The $7,826.20 bill plus the 25% tip came out to a tidy $957.75. I paid it. It wasn't easy. I drained most of my savings, the ones I'd been meticulously building for a down payment on a small apartment, and took out a small, short-term loan to cover the rest. It felt like a gamble. A huge chunk of my financial security poured into a moment of calculated revenge. But it was also an investment. Now, several months on, Karmic Tables is more than just a name. Hope Ramirez, 26, is my full-time assistant, and she's a godsend. Her social media skills are legit, and she's helped me build a client base that values transparency and genuine service. We've done a few small events already. a launch party for a local artist, a community fundraiser, a low-key anniversary dinner. Nothing as lavish as Elena's shower, but each one has been profitable and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. The business grant from Ms. Albright's firm was the kickstart I needed, allowing me to invest in proper equipment in a small office space. I'm gaining clients, traction, and a real platform. The Mason family, meanwhile, is still reeling. Elena, 29, is reportedly still in a deep funk. Her wedding to Davis Kent, 33, isn't just postponed, it's off. Davis, it turns out, really did have a line he wouldn't cross. He didn't come back. The Mason name, once so pristine in their social circles, is now whispered about, synonymous with the Cakegate scandal. Prudence Mason, 55, Elena's mother, is apparently beside herself, trying to salvage their reputation, but it's a losing battle. The viral video, my 25% tip, Tobias's expose, it all chipped away at their carefully constructed facade. Speaking of Tobias, 30, his expose, The Gilded Cage, blew up in its own right. He didn't name names directly, but anyone in their circle knew exactly who he was talking about. He detailed the financial manipulations, the backroom deals, the casual cruelty of the elite, all under the guise of philanthropy and social grace. He'd clearly been sitting on this for years, observing silently, just as he had at the bridal shower. It hit the Masons hard, exposing them not just for the bridal shower fiasco, but for a pattern of behavior that went much deeper. Roland Mason, 57, my uncle, has been noticeably quieter at family functions, even more so than usual. I think he's finally seeing the full extent of the rot. I haven't spoken to Elena since that day. I don't expect to. The family may never reconcile, and honestly, I don't want them to. That part of my life, the part where I crave their acceptance, is over. What I brought to the table that day wasn't just a $14.99 cake. It was years of being overlooked, of being underestimated, of being made to feel like I didn't belong. It was the quiet strength I'd built from working hard, from cleaning up other people's messes, from understanding the mechanics of these lavish events from the ground up. I'm still Vanessa Burke, 27, still grounded, still observant. But now I'm also the founder of Karmic Tables. I paid off that bill, yes, and it stung a little. But the return on that investment, priceless. Most of all, I feel seen. Not by them, not by the Masons or their plastic smile friends, but by people who truly understand my worth, by clients who appreciate honest work, by service industry peers who saw me as one of their own, and by a venture capitalist who saw my potential. The cake may have cost $14.99, but the look on Elena's face when that gold-framed bill was delivered, priceless. They wanted me to be the embarrassment. They became the cautionary tale.